we'll do in the Maimorim Ulukotim in Chelik Gimel. This is the 20th Maimer. The Maimer Biom Ashti Osir Yom Nos Livnei Osher, which the Rebbe said on Yud Aleph Nisan, h'tshlא Lamed Aleph, and it says in the star over here that this has been published in a special booklet in a kuntris of Yud Aleph Nisan Tafshin Mem Tes, and in the kuntris, in the introduction, it says this was in honor towards the Yom HaBoyer, the clear day of Yud Aleph Nisan, the 87th birthday of the Rebbe. This is, and it's signed off Erev Shabbos HaGodel Tafshin Mem Tes. Let's do the Maimer inside. Yom Ashti Osir Yom Nos Livnei Osher. So this is the Korbanos HaNesim that they started bringing, beginning with Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So on the 11th day, B'Yom Ashti Osir is Yom, on Yud Aleph Nisan of Yom Ashti Osir Yom is Nos Livnei Osher. At that time, the leader of the tribe of Asher, he brought the Korbanos. That was his turn for the Bnei Asher. So we find in the Medrash that Kol Hashvotim l'shem Gulosum Shal Yisrael l'shem Shovchom Nikru Shmoisom. That all the names that the different tribes were named, this is for on the name of the redemption of the Yidden and on the name of the praise. That's the name. So we find that each one of the names, the name Asher represents both the redemption of Yidden and also the praise of Yidden. How do we see it with regards to Asher? So we bring different psukim. The Asher brings down Nikra Shmoy L'Shem Gemulosum Shel Yisrael. The Asher, his name was called for the on the sake of the name of the redemption of Yidden. Kimoshe Kosu v'ishru eschem kol hagoyim kitiu atem eretz chayfetz omar Hashem tzvois. Ishru, they will say that you were lucky. Kol hagoyim ishru eschem kol hagoyim. All the goyim will say ashreichem. And because Kitiyu Altam Eretz Chayfetz, the Yidden will be an Eretz Chayfetz, Omar Hashem Tzvokeh. So this is talking about the time of redemption. At that time, the Pasuk in Malachi, Perigimel Pasuk Yud Beis, is talking about the redemption, and over there it says Ishru, which is the name Osher, and also L'Shem Shvachim, also the praise in the name of Osher. K'modetema, as the pasuk says, Ashrei ha'om shekocha loy Ashrei ha'om she'Hashem elokov. Again, Osher, Ashrei. Ashrei is fortunate, the people that so is to him, and fortunate are the people she'Hashem elokov, God is his God. So that is the special praise and the special name of Osher, which represents the Shvachim Shel Yisrael. Ein Ishuron Shel Yisrael, the good fortune of the Yidden is not but Ella only for Al Shebachru B'Kadosh Baruch Hu Liyis Lahem Leilikim. The good fortune is because they chose, they were Boicher in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Yidden chose Hashem to be their God. That is their Osher, that is their Osher, that's their good fortune. And he adds, "V'Hakadosh Baruch Hu Bachar Bahem Liyisrael Am Segula." Hashem also chose them to be to him for a treasured nation. So the Yidden chose Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu chose them. Ulefikoch K'shabo Nasi Osher Lahakriv. And therefore, when the Nasi of the tribe of Asher came to bring his korban on the Yom Ashti Osir Yom, on the 11th day of Nisan, Hikriv korbonoi al shem habechira shebachar HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Yisrael mikol umis. So he brought the korban because of that which Hashem chose the Yidden of all the nation. As the pasuk says, "Ubechol Bachar Hashem liyis leilam zgula," that Hashem chose you to be His treasured nation. So it says here that when they came to Korbanos, why did they bring Al Shem? What was brought for the fact that the Eibishter chose the Yidden? And it brings the pasuk. So what is strange, what the Rebbe is asking here over here in the end, it turns out the korban is brought because Hashem was boicher in the Yidden, but in the beginning he says, "Ein Yishurim Shel Yisrael," is because they chose Hashem. He only brings down, added that Hashem chose them too, but here we make the main thing is that they were chosen by Hashem. Tzarich lahavin, we need to understand the B'chilas Omer in the beginning of the matter in this medrash. He says the Ishuron Shel Yisrael. What is the good fortune of the Yidden who shebachru ma'Kodesh Baruch Hu, that they chose Hashem? That's the main thing. Now it says, he continues. Itake says, "V'zeh shemamshich shaKodesh Baruch Hu bachar bahem." That he continues over there and he says that the Eibusher chose them as well. That seems to be an additional matter. But the main thing is that Hashem, the fortune of the Yidden is that they chose Hashem. And then later on when he says, when they brought the korban, he says, the Asher al Shem Ishurun Shel Yisrael. That what is the Asher? Because of the Ishurun, the good fortune of the Yisrael, Hikriv Korbanu. Asher Hashem Ishurun Shel Yisrael. That's why is the Asher. Asher is because that represents the good fortune of the Yidden, is what? Hikriv Korbanu. Over here it says, Al Shem HaBechira Shabochar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. That is because of the Bechira that Hashem chose the Yidden. Doesn't say that it's the Yidden that chose Hashem. It says Hashem chose the Yidden. So how do we reconcile the beginning of the Medrash with the end of the Medrash? There's also another thing we need to understand. That the Bechira Shayich Davke B'shnei Dvorim Sheshneim Shavim. That Bechira, it really can only apply in two items that are equal. You have to choose between two. If it's one has some advantage over the other, you don't have to. It's not a matter of a choice. That is the advantages there. Choosing, you choose things that are equal. Or sometimes you have two things. One has one advantage, and the other one has another advantage. You have to choose which advantage you have. You have to choose sometimes when each one has some sort of an advantage that the other one doesn't have. But when we say that the Yidden chose HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Yidden's choice HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that doesn't seem like to be something of a choice. When we talk as it connects to Hashem, Kodesh Baruch Hu, and to distinguish with the strange God, how can we say, how does it fit to say that he didn't chose HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Well, Derech says, a similar question would be in the choice that it says Hashem chose the Jewish people. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose the Yidden, Hare Yisrael heim nailim be'ein arech mikol ha'umes, but Yidden are elevated infinitely without any comparison from all nations. U'ma'usha HaKadosh Baruch Hu bochar b'Yisrael. So why do we say Hashem chose? Not a choice. The Yidden, it's a mile over there, much greater. But the Rebbe brings down that in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe addresses and says That is the Jewish body, not the soul. That's Takamayla. Gama Shekosu Betanya. Also, this that it says in the Tanya that the bon ubocharto mikol am veloshin hu haguf achumri. When we say you chose us from all nations and languages, is referring to the materialistic body. Hadid mevechumri yusei legufe umesoilon, which is in its materialism, is similar, is compared to the bodies of the nations of the world. You don't see there's no difference. We need to choose the body. Even that tzarich mir, we need to explain this. Why? Shehaguf de Yisrael nidme bechitzonis. This that the Jewish body appears externally to the bodies of the nations of the world. That does not explain when it is connects to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibishter does not get blinded by the materialism appearance that is the same. He knows. We're saying B'chol Bacha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose. So even as far as the body of a Yid goes, while to us the body seems but that's not HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't see it that way. He sees the Mila even of the Jewish body. So why do we need Bechira when we talk about Hashem? Base. So it brings down the Yuvon Bahagdi Mashakosu. We'll understand this by introducing what it says. Chelki Havaya Omro Nafshi. So this is David HaMelech in Eicha, no, David HaMelech, in Eicha Perigimel Posik Chav Dalet. So over there it says, Chelki Havaya Omro Nafshi. My soul says, you are my portion, Hashem. Hashem himself is my portion. Not satisfied with anything less than Hashem. It is Hashem who's my portion. So we find the Medrash explains this pasuk in Eicha Rabbah. On the pasuk, the Medrash says, Moshul lemelech shenichnas lemedina. This is an example to a king who entered into the country. V'hoyu imoi doichsin v'iparchin v'istartiloitin chulu. These are different levels in the officers of the king. One more important than the others, very distinguished. One is duchsin, one is iparchin, and one is istartiloitin. So Chad Omar, so one person, when they all came in, all these important people, so one got impressed. He says, I am going to take the doichsin legabi for me. Very impressed and want to connect with the doichin. Chad Omar once said, one said, I'm going to take the iparchin to legabi. V'chad Omar, I'm going to take the istartilutin for me. In other words, I'm going to connect with that. He was impressed. So they're different levels, the people with whom they wanted to connect. So there was one smart person there. Omar, he says, Anon nafs nosiv malko. He says, I'm going to take the king. The kulhu mischalfin, umalko einu mischalaf. All of them change. Nu duchsin, the nu iparchsin, the king appoints and make changes. But umalko einu mischalaf, the king doesn't change. So the Medrash can say it continues from this marshal. What is this parable to? Cain umaz hoylom. Likewise is the nation of the world. Mehen evdim lechamod. Some of them worship the sun. Umehem evdim lelevana. Some of them worship the moon. Aval Yisrael, but the Yidden einan evdim ela lakadosh baruch hu. They only serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what the pasuk says. Chelki havaya amra nafshi. My portion, Hashem is my portion, says my soul. Nothing less, nothing different. So the question is, that doesn't take such wisdom to choose the king, to choose Chelki havayit. You do hadiyuk bazeh, so it's known the question in this the statement, even one who is not wise, even a small child, knows that the king is more greater than the duchsin. Why is it needed being wise, smart, in order to choose the king? So this is not such a big chokhmah, such so wise. Even a child knows that. And also the reason given that he chooses the king is because the others change and the king doesn't change. And what happened if the others ones would not have changed? Still, the king is much higher. And also harigam im hadochsim v'chulu, even if the dochsin and the other ones lohoyu mischal would not have been changing, hoyu moving b'pashtus, it would be very clearly, simply understood, shahamelach hu gadol mehem, that the king is greater than them. So the reasoning that he gives why he chooses the king is because the others change and the king doesn't change, doesn't seem to be the reason. The reason is because the king is much greater. Especially based on what it's known, the Pirush HaKosuv explains the posik. The posik in Shmuel Aleph and Perik Tes posik Beis. The posik talks about the king. It says Meshichmoi umaylo govoya mikol om. The shoulder, from the shoulder of the king, he is higher than, even his shoulder is higher. Shegam shichmoi shel hamelach. Even the shoulder of the king, the shoulder is underneath the head. So even his shoulder, that represents, the shoulder represents the emotions that extend from the intellect of the head and below. That's the shechem, that's the shoulder below the head. Even that part, that is higher than even the intellect of all the people. The king's emotion, lower than his seichel, is higher than the seichel of the people. And when we say the shebazeh, when we say we mean even the duchsin, the parchsin, the chlolim, gam hasorim machi gedolim. This would include even the greatest sorim. So the king is so much greater, even the shechem is greater than their seichel. So v'lomo tzorich lahatam, the kulum is chalfim. So why do we need the reasoning? Because they all change. It's just simply because it's higher. Gimel. It would seem that maybe we can explain this based on what was known, that in the earlier generations, those who worshipped the stars, the constellations, Yodu, they knew that the flow that the earth experiences by means of the stars and the constellation, as the posuk says, mimeged tvuos shomesh, the sweetness of the grain that comes from the sun, Umi Megid, and the sweetness of Geresh Yerochim that gets chased from the ground is that the moon impacts the impact of the sun and the moon, the Kechovim, in the grain. It's not that they were under the idea that the sun and the moon themselves give the flow. That's not what it was, their mistake. They knew Elosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu mashpia al yodam, that they're just, Hashem gives through them. Elosh etov v'choshvu, what they made a mistake and what they thought, shehashefa shenimshach mimenu yizborich ha'idei ha'kechovim v'mazolis, that flow that is being flowed from him through the stars and the constellation, who be chirosom, it's in their choice. They choose to be mashpia, the flow from Hashem. Below yodu asa'em, as they didn't know the truth, she'ein lahem bechira klal, they have no choice at all. Vehem rak kagarzen biyad ha'choitzav, they were all served as the metal in the hand of the one that carves. You're not going to give any credence to the metal because the metal isn't doing anything. It's the digger, the choitzev, the digger, who gets the credit because he does the whole things. But they didn't know. They thought that the garzen, that the digger, that the metal also chooses to become. They thought like Kechovim, that's why they bowed to the stars and the constellations to worship them. Because based on their mistake, because according to the mistake, that the flow that comes through the stars in the constellation is in their choice. So we thank them for that. Not that they're giving the flow, but they choose to bring the flow from Hashem. Similar as we say, Chamra Lemora to Yusul L'Shaki. While the owner, the wine belongs to the master, but who gets the thank you? The butler, the one who serves the wine. Even though it's not his wine, but still, he chooses to be the servant. He is a servant, so you give him the thank you. So you're saying thank you to the Kechovim Mazolis for being servants to give the flow of the Eibishter to us. The Gam, in addition to that, so first of all, they thought they deserved to be thanked because of their choice to give the flow. The Gam, in addition. Based on their mistake that the stars in the constellation have choice, they thought by serving them, they're going to give them more flow. So that was the beginning of the mistake, thinking that they have a choice. So from this, it evolved further. They came to a greater mistake, that they thought that Hashem has left the land in the hands of the stars in the constellation. And the conduct of the land hinges on them. Similar to a king who appointed officers to run the country. So while they realized that they were appointed to run the country, why do they have the power? The king appointed them. But yet, once the country, they were appointed, the conduct of the country goes by the officers, and the king doesn't get involved unless at great distance the king gets involved. So now they have basically the ability to manage, and it's not up to the king. So first they thought that they choose to become servants, they have a choice to become or not to become. And secondly, they thought that the king has allowed them and appointed them to give the to conduct the world.